Do choices really matter in Hogwarts Legacy? Sure, there are some different rewards from side missions with some good things to know there, but what about the options that feel like a big deal? Well, let's compare all the important ones in this video. A like would of course really support the channel, subscribe for more Hogwarts Legacy content, and let's go. You immediately make two important choices at the start of the game, that of course being your house and your choice of wand, as they are irreversible throughout the course of the game. There is one other major choice that can have a lasting effect, which we'll discuss later in the video, but let's talk about some of the side quest choices first. Take this quest for Nerida Robert for example. She needs your help retrieving a merpeople artifact because she can't swim. So you do, and you bring it back to her, at which point you can choose to keep the item for yourself. If you give it to her, she'll of course be very excited, but if you don't, she'll get upset even if you run into her later. What is a bit strange is that you also fight her in the Crossed Wands Dueling Club, which she will also mention sometimes. But it creates this weird interaction where sometimes she's pissed at you for taking her artifact, and sometimes she'll note that the duel was a lot of fun. Now there are more students that will reference you've met them before if they are part of multiple side quests. Like Grace for instance, who can be found just outside of Lower Hogsfield. You can help her recover her lost astrolabe here, but then later, if you've been doing the Summoner's Court minigame, you come across her as an opponent. And she will actually reference you helping her before. She'll even mention your diving skills again if you manage to beat her. No major difference here, but a nice little touch that adds to the immersion. There are choices that can change the outcome of a quest though, as in some cases the rewards do differ slightly. Which is something you can see in the quest for student Cressida Bloom. If you return her books to her, which include her diary, she will thank you for it and you get a wand handle as a reward. But if you choose to blackmail her for keeping her diary safe, she will also pay you 300 galleons. Which is actually quite a bit of money in the early game, so if you don't have a guilty conscience and don't mind Cressida writing about you in her diary, this is clearly the better option. You will hear her remark that she shouldn't have trusted you, and there is actually another small and interesting consequence to this, which I will touch on later. There are more quests that give you this option, and in some cases you have 3 options that decide what rewards you get. Like here we go and rescue a Diricol for someone, but then at the end of the quest we are presented with the option to just hand it to her, ask her to reward you for your troubles, or decide to keep the creature for yourself. In this particular example, you also get galleons if you complete the quest without asking for a reward, but if you do ask for payment, you get 500 of them instead of 300. And if you pick the third option and keep the beast yourself, you can of course put it in one of your vivariums, and fun fact about these quest related animals is that they keep the same name as they had in the quest, and you cannot change it like you can with the regular captured creatures. So if you really want the creature, you know what choice to make, but otherwise picking the option that gives you the most money is the best, as you probably won't be talking to most of these NPCs again. Although there is one example where picking the wrong dialogue option can lock you out of further conversations with an NPC. There's a merchant in Arranshire that has a quest where he asks you to retrieve an heirloom, and when you return it to him and ask for pay, he'll say that he can't pay much. If you then suggest that he sells the heirloom if he needs money, he will become upset and you can't talk to him again. Whereas if you just give him the heirloom back, you can still talk to him afterwards and make use of his services as a merchant. He didn't have anything good to sell, at least not for me, so you're not really missing out, but it is a nice touch. And while there are more quests that imply that your actions had an impact, some of them actually do the complete opposite. This is something that was discovered by KhrazeGaming, link to his channel will be in the video description, but if you do the Gobstones quest for Zenobia, you can find her outside later playing with the Gobstones that you return to her. At least that's what you would think, but turns out that if you don't give her the Gobstone, she will end up in the exact same spot. Like, I followed her to the location as she immediately walks there after you complete the quest, but then she still grabs Gobstones and plays with them even though you never gave them back. Now obviously most of the choices in the game are purely for role playing, but things like this do break up the immersion a little bit. It is good to note that you will always get the appearance or any other collection rewards from a quest, as no matter the choice you are always able to complete the collector's edition trophy or achievement, which requires you to get all of them. But as you can see, most side quests follow the same formula when it comes to choices. You have 2 or 3 options, with one of them always being nice and one a bit smug or mean, and sometimes picking a specific choice can give you an extra reward. The more interesting choices are saved for your companion's quest lines and the main story. At least that is what it looks like on the surface. But remember that scene from a pre-launch trailer where Sebastian talks about the fact that one of us has to cast Crucio on the other? It was presented as kind of a big deal. The official account even tweeted about it, saying that a choice needs to be made. But it's not really much of a choice, at least not when it it comes to the results. We put footage from our different playthroughs together, and no matter what you pick here, there are no real or lasting consequences. If you cast Crucio on Sebastian, he will confirm that it hurts like hell, but then he just kind of walks it off. And if you let him cast it on you, consuming a Wiggenweld potion will set you straight pretty much immediately. If you choose the third option, I don't want to learn the Cruciatus curse, Sebastian will still cast it on you, but you won't learn how to cast the spell. Which is kind of a consequence, but you can ask Sebastian to teach it to you after the mission by talking to him in the Undercroft, so it's not a permanent one either way. Something similar happens during the quest where you learn Avada Kedavra, where you can either tell Sebastian that no one should know that curse or that everyone should know it. If you pick the first option, it seems like a big choice because you are effectively saying you're not willing to kill someone to reach your goals. That is, until you change your mind and come back to Sebastian, as you can still learn the killing curse from him afterward the same way you can with Crucio. And while I get that people would have been upset if you only got one chance at learning the unforgivable curses, I do think that it makes the choices during these missions a lot less interesting. And ultimately, your choices have no impact on your companion either, as no matter how much you encourage or disapprove of Sebastian's use of the dark arts, the entire quest will pretty much play out exactly the same, with one big exception that I will get to in a bit. Now, to discuss some of the choices that do matter, we need to get into some main and companion quest spoilers, so if you haven't finished those, come back later and don't forget to subscribe on the way out. You still there? Alright, then let's talk about the one big choice that does really make a difference, which is what to do with Sebastian after you finish his questline. During the mission in the Shadow of Fate, you can decide to hand him over to the headmaster for what he's done, which, let's be frank, is something pretty bad, or you can choose to keep it between you, Ominous, Sebastian, and Anne. If you choose the latter, nothing much really changes, but if you do hand Sebastian in, he's of course gone from the school. Meaning you also lose your option of going back to him to learn the unforgivable curses if you hadn't done so already. And this creates an interesting question for any potential DLC or a sequel, as handing Sebastian in will likely send him to Azkaban. So maybe this has an impact on any potential future content Avalanche has planned, as you would think that we haven't seen the last of Poppy, Seb, and Natsai. But while the other two have a set ending, the continuation of Sebastian's story could differ wildly depending on the choices you made during the main game. And speaking of which, did you know that during the main quest, the Polyjuice plot, your interaction with different students will change depending on what you did during their quests? Like, we can meet Cressida again as Professor Black, and if you helped her out, she will mention this. Whereas if you didn't do the quest, she will just say she's seen you around. And if you were mean to her, she will mention this as well and also call you a rotten little extortionist. Which again, I think is totally worth it for how much money she gives you. The ending for the main story also poses a choice that results in a slightly different outcome. You might have missed this one, as you actually make your choice before going into the final battle during your conversation with Fig, which makes it feel a bit disjointed. But depending on what you picked here, you get a slightly different cutscene. If you chose the first option, so to reseal the ancient magic under Hogwarts, Fig helps you with this and you sit beside him in his final moments. You give him back his wife's wand, after which he tells you that the wizarding world could not be in more capable hands. If you select the second choice and choose to release the magic, Fig will not appear in the final cutscene, meaning he actually died from the boulder that dropped on him, which is kind of weird, as the exact same thing happens in the good ending, but there he survives long enough to help you out later. So instead of relying on him, you take a big sniff of some of that ancient magic, your eyes begin to glow red, and you solve the problem yourself. You also see some traces of the evil ancient magic still floating around in the cutscene, which I think does imply that you set the power free, as that is the choice that coincides with this ending. I am curious though if this choice will have an impact on potential DLC or maybe a sequel. So at the end of the day, I do still think the biggest choice to make is actually at the start of the game when you pick your house. We made a video on all the differences your house choice will make in your playthrough, so check that one out by clicking on the screen. Subscribe for way more tips and tricks for Hogwarts Legacy, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!